Hello, hello, hello. I am really excited and happy to be with you today. I am going to present some material about the thyroid. It's going to be all about thyroid health and thyroid, especially in women that are in menopause, postmenopause, because it's just so common. And I don't want there to be an issue with that. Now, if you are watching, please let me know if you can hear me. Okay, and we have multiple platforms today. So I do want this to be a Q&A. So if you have any specific things that you want to talk about, please post them in the chat and let me know what is important to you. That's really important to me. Let's see, I might need to test. Well, I don't think it would come back. Let me know. I'm hoping that all of the uh, audio is coming through okay. Anyway, let's get started. I'm gonna start with the basics of thyroid because a lot of people don't really know, what does the thyroid do? Where is it? And what are the important factors that I need to look for? So the thyroid sits right here in our throat area, and it's kind of like a butterfly shape, which is kind of interesting. I don't but it has a big impact on our body. It's a small organ with a big impact, and it helps with four major functions that I want to talk about. The first one is metabolism, which is the one that women in postmenopause seem to experience the most because they're very concerned about their weight, which obviously all of us are. And that was definitely something that I had to deal with when I went through my earlier stages of menopause. And I did have a history of thyroid problems in my family with my mom. So I specifically really wanted to make sure that my thyroid was healthy. So that the metabolism is one thing, that like how you burn energy, how you burn like calories is energy, and it's responsible for our energy. All right, the other one, next one is heart. So it can be responsible for kind of an irregular heartbeat. It can influence your heart rate, if it could speed up or slow down, and blood pressure can be very much dramatically affected by your thyroid. It also helps to regulate temperature. And I think that's a connection that a lot of people make. They know that when the thyroid function is lower, that they might have cold hands and feet and be very susceptible to cold weather, especially. And or if your thyroid is especially high, then you might be more sensitive to heat. And some people experience that. That's not as common, but it does happen. And when you have a hyperthyroid, you're going to not have the same issues with weight because you're burning calories faster and your metabolism is generally faster. Then the last one is kind of surprising that a lot of women do not understand. It is affects our mood and our cognition. So may be responsible for partly for depression, for irritability when it's not functioning properly, for your memory, and for concentration. And that's another reason the memory is something that I'm also very concerned with, because my mom had dementia, a form of dementia called Lewy body, if you ever heard of that. And women are also, I think, 10 times more susceptible to memory issues. So that is kind of scary. And that is another reason why we want to make sure that we are protecting our thyroid. And we're going to talk about how we do that and how we go about with prevention, because holistically, it's not just about getting on a thyroid hormone. It's about one, preventing that from occurring. And if the hypothyroid is starting to manifest, meaning that you're experiencing some of those symptoms and your metabolism may be slowed down, we actually can reverse the effect by correcting those nutritional deficiencies. So that's another thing that is very important and that I get asked about. So the women, most of my work, I'm working with women 45 to 75-ish, and that's your perimenopause, menopause age. And they say that 1 in 8 of us has some thyroid dysfunction. That's actually quite a few women, which is an indicator to me of how off balance we are and why. The thing that I look at as a holistic provider is how we can start early enough to prevent these diseases and things from occurring. And we can do that. So some of the symptoms that you may experience, you have fatigue, okay, the weight gain, very common, depression, like I mentioned, you might have hair loss. So it might just start out where you're washing your hair and more hair is falling out while you're taking a shower. It could be that when you're combing your hair, that a lot more is coming out on your brush and you're like, oh no, and you're wondering what's going on. Like I said about the cold sensitivity, that your hands get cold more easily, that you're really chilly in your office and constantly having to bundle up, but no one else does, or it's not a common thing, then you know that it's actually you and your metabolism. You might notice changes in your skin getting really dry. And constipation is also a very important thing. And when you go to the doctor with constipation, they're going to address it as a gastrointestinal issue most of the time. They're not going to normally associate it with hypothyroid, except maybe if you have all the other symptoms and then they do a test and then you get on medication and you never really fix the underlying problem, then you could end up with some of the issues that I was talking about earlier, where you start having memory problems and things like that, because you're not addressing kind of the underlying nutritional deficiencies. And it probably isn't only the thyroid that's being affected. It could be other organs and other parts of your body as well. So as we get older, this incident of hypothyroid does seem to increase. And it isn't because we're older. It's because we've had this hormonal and nutritional deficiency for a longer period of time. And these organs start to wear out because they can't keep functioning without the material they need to function. Just like trying to run your car on no gas, or the oil is dirty and you just keep running it over and over again. And what happens? The engine eventually becomes disrepair, goes into disrepair, and you eventually don't have a car anymore. So we want to maintain our body. It's just the same, we want to maintain our body just like we would take care of our car or any mechanical thing, because our physical body does need to be replenished like anything that is in the physical world. All right. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is the increase in Hashimoto's is very, very common in this age group. And it is also another disease, like it's a type of hypothyroidism, but it's an autoimmune disease. And autoimmune challenges have to be handled a little differently, although they are often involve these nutritional and these deficiencies. They aren't only about that. They're about this heightened immune function. And one thing they have found, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, is that there's a very strong connection between Hashimoto's and deficiency in vitamin D. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that vitamin D part. Excuse me. I just attended a conference on that and they were talking about the importance of vitamin D for immune, and there's a little bit different way of handling the vitamin D deficiency with an autoimmune disease than there is with other things. So we're going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. In hyperthyroidism, it's an overactive thyroid. And not, like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's not nearly as common, but you might experience weight loss as opposed to weight gain. You might have nervousness, an increase in anxiety, and there can be other reasons for that. So it might not be connected to thyroid right away. Your heart rate might increase, and that also makes you feel more nervous, right? You might get sweaty, in the palms of your hand or any, other parts of your body, and you might experience some insomnia where you're not able to go to sleep. Your mind is too active and you're not able to sleep. And that just isn't as common. But thyroid disease overall is not, it's often overlooked until it gets to a later stage where it then becomes, you've already had a lot of damage in your body and to the thyroid, and it's much more difficult or probably not possible to start to do that reversal. But if you catch it early enough, then we can. All right, let's talk a little bit about the about iodine and different substances nutritionally that you may be lacking. And please, if you are watching, please do put in the chat. I hope that everybody can see the chat. Enter any questions that you have about anything I'm presenting or anything that you came here to learn. I want to address that today. Okay, so iodine is very important for actually manufacturing the hormones themselves. They're actually part of T3 and T4, which are your two thyroid hormones. So if you don't have enough iodine, you can't make your thyroid hormones. And so obviously your thyroid's not going to function right. And one of the things that you might notice is an enlargement of, especially when it gets more extreme, you might have an enlargement of your thyroid. And how do you get enough? And sometimes you do need to supplement, and if it's become really severe, that may be something to do. And there are ways of us testing that. But you can add iodized salt, because a lot of people stopped eating salt or they don't use the iodized salt. If you're using sea salt, it tastes good and it has minerals in it, but doesn't have enough iodine. You'd have to go use the iodized salt. Seaweed is another source, another kind of seafood. Really, a lot of seafood has some iodine in it. Dairy products is another one, eggs, and like I said, different kinds of seafood. Okay, the next one that is important is selenium. Selenium is one of those minerals that had become deficient in the soil. So there isn't as much in the fruits and vegetables as there used to be that we would get enough selenium. So sometimes people do need to eat specific sources that have it, or be sure that they're taking a vitamin mineral that have or trace mineral or formula that has selenium in it. So some of the deficiency symptoms that you may experience is fatigue, hair loss, and the brain fog is part of the connection to a loss of selenium. Selenium helps convert T4 into T3. T3 is your active form. So if you don't have that ability to convert, then you're not going to have enough of the active form and become hypothyroid of the T3. Vitamin A is also involved in this. And so getting enough vitamin A and selenium are the things that are needed to change the T4 into T3. Apparently, Brazil nuts, which I actually do like, but I don't eat them very often, have one of the highest sources of selenium. sunflower seeds. So you can do the seeds or the sunflower butter, which I've used, and I really like that. Tuna is a good source, and so is turkey. So those are things that you can do to get enough selenium. Okay, another one is zinc. And a lot of people, a lot of women seem to know that zinc is really important for their immune system, but they don't realize that it's also very important for your thyroid. And it supports the immune aspect of that. So hair loss and something and a depleted immune system where you're getting sick more frequently, that is one of the signs of being zinc deficient. And your immune system has a lot of different components. So it's not only zinc, but zinc is one of those that is necessary. And the other one, which I talked a little bit about earlier, is vitamin D. Just absolutely essential for so many functions in menopause. And there's actually an increased demand for vitamin D because of how much it does. And I do have a video about this on my YouTube site about vitamin D. But vitamin D is really important in preventing autoimmune disease. And like we were saying, Hashimoto's is very connected, and hypothyroidism also, to a deficiency in vitamin D. Now, you may get tested and it may seem like you have enough, and the doctor will look at it and think you have, maybe you are deficient, but unfortunately, with autoimmune disease, you need a lot more than the average person. There's something about the way that vitamin D is metabolized by people that have autoimmune challenges that make it necessary for them to have a larger amount. And I'm talking about anywhere from 10,000 IUs a day to 50,000, when most people might do okay with 1 or 2,000. So you need to actually get tested. There's no way to know if you have the right levels unless you're tested, and you need to work with a holistic provider or some physician that is familiar with making sure that you can take this higher dose. And keeping, the only thing that some doctors are fearful of is developing calcification from having a high dose of vitamin D, and there are ways to prevent that. So that is not a major concern. A lot of people are taking 10,000 to 50,000 every day and not developing any kidney stones or any calcifications. So, and actually, they are having success with things like the Hashimoto's, with multiple sclerosis, with trying to think, Graves' disease, other kind of autoimmune challenges with these high doses of vitamin D. It's really pretty amazing what vitamin D does. All right, let's see what else we want to talk about. Now, vitamin D, how do you know if you're deficient? So I did say that you need to get tested. That's really the most important thing. And they measure it in nanograms per milliliter. Most doctors are trying to get their patients to, they used to do 20 to 40 nanograms per milliliter. Now we know that when you're in menopause and you're trying to prevent bone loss and you're trying to prevent thyroid issues and immune problems, there's so many things that vitamin D does. You want it to, minimally between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. However, if you get it above 60, more in the 60 to 100, 60 to 80 range, you actually can prevent 82% of breast cancers. Okay, so why not? Vitamin D is one of the most inexpensive supplements. It is very well tolerated, almost close to zero side effects. And I strongly recommend, if you are deficient, starting out at least 5,000 IU and getting it up. Now, I'll tell you a quick little story about vitamin D, is that when I started going through menopause, I was below 20. Okay, so I was very deficient. I was practicing, I was a single mom. I didn't get outside nearly as much as I like to have, and I was very deficient. And I had immune issues. I would get sick pretty frequently when I was younger. especially when I was younger. Well, I started taking the 5,000 IU, and I got it up to the 60 to 80 mark. I don't know how long it took me. It takes a little time before you get up there, but went through COVID, working in an office, working with a lot, side by side with people who then came down with COVID. My daughter had COVID right in my house. I never got COVID, and I was around it a lot. And I don't get colds, I don't get flus, and I think I'm definitely an example of how vitamin D significantly improved my immune system. I was born with celiac disease, and when I was younger, I didn't I didn't know it. And so I think that was the reason why I was so A and D deficient, is because I wasn't absorbing a lot of my nutrients because of my intestinal tract. So anyway, that just a little side note about that and why it's so important. The other one that's really important for your thyroid is iron. And this is kind of interesting because iron is necessary for your thyroid, but most women are not iron deficient. And I have seen so many women being put on iron supplements that really don't need it. And the reason they may test low on iron is because they're hypothyroid and they don't manufacture red blood cells that you can measure the iron in at the same rate because of their thyroid, not because they have true iron deficiency. So this is something you need to work with someone that is more holistic to understand and make sure that you're not getting on iron supplements when that is not what you need. All right. So let's talk about preventing the thyroid imbalances and some things that we can do. So we talked some about the nutrition. I want to go into some other aspects. So autoimmune disorders are a little bit more difficult, and eating really good whole foods, getting enough of your greens, and like we said with iron, if eating some meat and some sources of meat. If you're vegetarian, you're going to have to do sources that, like spinach is still a good source, even though the amount of iron in spinach has really been diminished. Lentils, and you have all your fortified foods that are fortified with iron, and that's one of them that the government put in there so you wouldn't be deficient. The other thing is, so in addition to the nutritional support, which we kind of did some review there, stress management. So stress in menopause is kind of a given when your body is changing so much and there's a lot of upheaval in the family, there's changes in relationships. A lot of things seem to happen in midlife that just are like a wham, and our stress levels can often go up. That increases our cortisol levels. Cortisol interferes with thyroid hormone. So it's not surprising that if you've been under a lot of stress and you haven't gotten your cortisol levels lowered, you also may experience this hypothyroid. And it is hopefully at that stage where you can reverse it with not eliminating stress from your life, but trying to minimize the effect that stress has on you physically and emotionally. And how do you do that? We do that through exercise. So walking, a long walk, yoga, meditation, Tai Chi are all well-known ways of reducing. Also, being out in nature lowers our cortisol levels. And, whatever it is for you, to find that time and place. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Finding that time and place that you can. What a time to start sneezing. Okay. talking about. I'll be right back. That is very strange. All of a sudden, something came into my environment that made me start sneezing. Okay. Okay, I'm done. Okay. So the stress level, we're talking about that, and that will help with so many different functions and very, very important. I do recommend having your thyroid tested if you feel like you have a lot of these symptoms. So what in our program, we do a test called the Dutch Complete. And the Dutch Complete looks at all of your hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid, vitamin D. It looks at all of the different metabolites of estrogen. It just looks at a cortisol. So all of these things are part of a holistic way of looking at your body, because like I was saying earlier, if you address only one part, you're missing that what may have been a damage to other organs. You're missing other nutritional deficiencies that may come back to you later on. And the things that get most affected are potential for cancer, memory loss and cognition loss. Those are, there's another one I'm leaving out here. I'll think of it in a minute. But some of the diseases and states of life that hit us as we get older, losing energy, by losing our energy and vitality, that's a major thing. So by addressing these nutritional deficiencies and helping reverse some of the organ issues when we're younger, will help us 10, 20, 30, 40 years into the future, especially if we maintain that. So that's really important. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is our exposure to toxins. So that can affect all different organs, and it can definitely affect our thyroid specifically, is what we're talking about today. But things like pesticides, BPA, heavy metals are all toxins in our environment, and we can't obviously stay away from it forever, completely, because we're breathing in air. We can't control the air that we're breathing, but we can't avoid the kind of plastics that have the BPA, and a lot of people know that. Pesticides, we can't, if we live in an area that's heavily sprayed and it's in the soil and it's in the water, it's very hard to stay away from it completely. That's why it's important for all of us to buy and use organic produce and meats as much as possible to try to limit the amount of exposure, because we can't, if you protect yourself that way, then you at least have some control. The other one is the heavy metals. Okay, so heavy metals, unfortunately, a lot of supplements even are tainted with heavy metals. And there are the supplements that are produced in the United States and that are evaluated by independent laboratories have been tested for these heavy metals. But when you buy things from other countries, like China is well known to have a lot of supplements and things that have heavy metals in it. Even I've heard about wine having heavy metals. I use maca, a specific form that comes from Peru, and that I use for postmenopausal women. Apparently, there's a specific area of China that grows a lot of this maca, and they are heavily tainted with heavy metals. So that's kind of scary, because then you're trying to do something good and fixing one thing, and you're causing a toxic overload in your body. If you think you've been exposed to toxins and you want to clear that out, you need to do a full detox program, and that you need to do with a professional to help manage any potential eruption, because sometimes when these things come out of our system, they've been stored in fatty tissues, and they start coming out. If you do it too quickly, you can have negative effects from that. So they need to be pulled out of your body in a slow way. And that's a topic for a whole other video. But I just wanted to specifically discuss how to increase the organic. All right. So we talked a little bit today about our thyroid hormones and T3 and T4 and how it regulates our metabolism, our brain function, our heart function. And it's just essential for our everyday life and what we're doing every day. So women between 45 and 75 are particularly vulnerable, not just because of their age, like I mentioned, but because of an accumulative effect of all these deficiencies, imbalances, toxins that have come into our body that we haven't dealt with at the level that we need to in order to correct the problem from the ground up, so to speak, from the root causes. So nutritional deficiencies, we talked about iodine, selenium, zinc, vitamin D, iron. And the other one, like I mentioned, is vitamin A. Vitamin A and selenium are the ones that are involved in changing your your hormone T4 into T3. So you could start developing hypothyroid symptoms and think that you're hypothyroid when really it's a nutritional deficiency. That is the kind that's the easiest to correct, and that we need to get to the bottom of as quickly as possible. So what I recommend for anyone who is suffering from some of these issues is to do our hormonal imbalance and deficiency screening quiz. And I'm going to put the link in the description so that you can do this screening. If you come out high on different areas, then you'll know that there's a problem, and I do provide solutions in there. So if you have a couple that are really high and some that are kind of not as low to medium, then start with the ones that are most severe. And if you're unsure, that's what the testing is for. The testing is to kind of confirm what really is going on. The screening test is just to let you know that there are imbalances and deficiencies there, and that they can be corrected. And all of it can be corrected holistically. I went through menopause completely holistically. I started on HRT for a little while. It didn't really help me. And what helped me the most is being on progesterone and dealing with these underlying nutritional deficiencies. That was the thing that actually gave me the most benefit. And so here I am, almost 70 now, and I have energy comparable to my 30-something-year-old daughter, and I still go hiking in the mountains. I still do so many things and really enjoying my life. I don't have any brain fog. I have clarity of thought, my mood. I haven't had any mood issues. And so I know, not just from my own experience, but I was my experiment. And then I've been working with women for many years, and I have seen the benefit of holistic care. And so I encourage you to take the quiz and do the screening and then get connected so that we can talk and see if we can find a program. We have different levels of program for whether you just want a little bit of support or a mid-range of support for several months to kind of get you started and get you moving. Or we also have a comprehensive anti-aging program that will take you step by step through the process of reversing your age. So just an example, we use a combination of testing. We have 3 panels that I use the most. The Dutch Complete, which looks at your entire hormonal picture. I have a weight loss panel that looks at all the different aspects of weight loss and weight management. And then the anti-aging one is a DNA test that you do a cheek swab, and it looks at, I think, 34, it looks at many, many different functions in your body on the understanding that we actually can now change our DNA. And with the things like we're talking about today, both nutritionally, supplement-wise, lifestyle, stress reduction, we have been able to prove that changing these things can make a profound effect on our lives, and they do it by actually changing at the level of our DNA, which is really pretty amazing. So I enjoyed talking to you today, and I hope that you got something out of this. And I look forward to working with you, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. All right, take care.